Well, hello, my name is SherriAnneDuffy-King, and I wrote the title of A Crucified Innocence, and it's book one of my series. I started this book about 15 years ago, and that was when I was like 15 or 16 years old. Alright, now, thank you for joining me. We're going to be doing chapter 43 onward till the film runs out, and keep doing it until we get all 70 chapters in. So without further ado, let's get going on this adventure with Evie. Chapter 43, Oubliette. The next morning, Aiden woke with a thrashing headache, not sure of what to make of it. He sat and almost fell back with shock of dizziness and pain. His head surely barred an immense wound, eyes blurry to the darkened room. He tried once more to sit, and when luck finally prevailed, he scanned his surroundings. He was on a cot a couple of inches from the ground. Cell bars, ancient iron, covered one wall, with a door made up of years of rusty desolation and neglect. Mold and filth filled the musky darkness. A door cracked open on the other side of the barred threshold, let a thin strip of light into view. Next to the entrance sat a burly old man, gut hanging out low as his hands cradled it like an expectant mother. Eyes heavy with brown bags of sleep, white beard stretching over his belly like a white waterfall cascading between his legs to sit comfortably on the floor like a blanket. His eyebrows white and sinking over his slumbering eyes like two cotton comforters, wheezing a snore from his gaping mouth while his nostrils continuously blow bubbles of snot. A gold chain entangled in his white stubbly fingers, the key falling low near his crotch, only inches from the dirt floor. Screams bellowed from the hall beyond the opposing door, rattling the startled old guarding officer awake. Rushing up to his feet, he almost forgot where he was and who he was. Ting! The gold chain and dangly key clattered to the floor. After registering everything, he got giddy and grinned, teeth black and rotting with white foam seeping from his lips, dripping to the floor. He looked at Aiden, then glanced down and reached for the fallen object, only to place it over his neck. As he placed it upon his neck, the door swung open and in stepped Akmalutra, followed by Iolaus. Akmalutra quickly grasped the dangling key off of the old guard's neck, ripping it. The chain, so new and sharp, sliced through the old man's neck, tearing flesh and bone, tossing it across the room where it hung. A huge chunk of his grotesque flesh slapped Aiden across the face, dribbling down his cheek to fall in a pile of blood at the base of his feet. Aiden quickly brushed off the smear of blood off his face with the edge of his hooded dark cloak sleeve. Akmalutra placed the key in the door and turned it. As it twisted in the lock, more flesh dribbled from the glistening chain. Erk! The door opened slowly. In stepped Iolaus, followed by Akmalutra, both their eyes flashing red and teeth gritted. So, she has fallen in love with you, with scum as meek and treacherous as you. Huh, Aiden? Aiden's head turned down, eyes glancing over his scuffed boots, his lips turning from a frown then to a smirk as he heard those words of encouragement. What are you smiling about? It wasn't meant to happen this way. She was supposed to fall for one of us. Akmalutra spat in disgust. Iolaus grasped the collar of Aiden's tattered cloak, lifting him up off of his feet and throwing him hard against the wall that broke his fall. Crack! Akmalutra rushed at Aiden, who slid down the wall, then grasping Aiden's left ankle and wrist, lifting him up off the ground in a 360-degree spin, landing him face first into the same shattered wall, cracking his nose. Who allies with you, Aiden? 'Tis Ollivander and Alfie, isn't it? Where has Lucinda taken Evie?" He screeched like an animal demented. Aiden would not tell them, his lips sealed shut as a locked vault. Finally Achmelech broke and said, he broke and spat out, "Iolaus, take this treacherous fool to the oubliette until tomorrow's execution by rope." Out of excited spite, Iolaus picked Aiden up and glided the traitor to the hole in the floor, then pulled him close and whispered, "'Tis you she saw when she surrendered her love and body to me. That awful ache in the pit of your stomach is your retribution. She will be mine again whilst you rot in your bottomless pit, with the maggots and vermin eating your flesh and nibbling on your broken neck as if it were jerky." Then he drops Aiden into the black abyss. Aiden's eyes wide and tears escaped. Things seemed to be falling apart for him. He knew how cruel Iolaus could be. The thought of him bewitching Evie into seduction was cruel. Anger rose to where his flesh prickled fur and his nose stretched. He could barely control his animal instincts as he thought of any man touching her. His heart also sank to the empty pit of his stomach. For hours he tried to escape the oubliette, only to fail at each attempt up the jagged walls. A sliver of light barely touched his eyes. He was so deep it was impossible for a species like him to escape. By the time he accepted fate and the possibility of ever being released, his animal instincts pulled back, as well as his fur slipping back into his body and nose shrinking to human form again. His piercing blue eyes stung from the fierce tears and many days' exhaustion. From worrying about Evie, his beard, still stubbly and soft, moved under his tightened jaw. His shoulder-length brownish-black hair was tangled and full of sweaty dirt particles. He was tired, sore, and on his hands and knees praying for help from anyone. Blood trickled down his shattered nose and cracked scalp, dripping down in streams, ending in dirt-mixed piles beside him. He sat in total darkness. The crate high above his head shared his fate, which was sealed and unable to change. Finally he rested his head in his knees and fell in silent slumber, dreaming of her and the short time they had spent together. He began to repent for all his sins, praying she would forgive him, knowing that her love meant the world to him. His thoughts smiled, knowing Evie was safe with Lucinda at the Elven Requiem Sanctuary. Then he was out. All thoughts were blank and everything spun, pulling him away from his reality. Chapter 44, Sanctuary. Rain, cold and icy, splattered Evie's skin, making her eyes flutter open in alarm. Lucinda held tight against her as they continued on their journey. Ithaca's wings slowly battered through the rain. Light started to brighten the surrounding sky, but the rain continued on its course as if the sun's presence had no effect on the rainy condition. Up ahead, Evie sees a wall, with rain pelting the side of it, falling slanted. It reminded her of a lake as she would dive headfirst into it, a standing vertical wall of liquid. This was odd. Rain seemed to slow as it hit it. The weird thing about it was the thought of maybe rain was falling out of it. Behind the wall of water holds the Elven Requiem Sanctuary, where time is halted still. Years in there were merely minutes on Hambala. Lucinda's voice was as meek as a humming whisper that trailed off into thought. Lucinda loosened her grip on Evie, then slid her hands under Evie's arms, digging her heated fingers into the flesh of Evie's chest. Inside her cleavage line, Lucinda squoze, then released and pulled them out of Evie's flesh. Black engulfed her fingertips. Lime glowed at the holes, sealed and became solid again. Evie felt pain and utter discomfort as she screamed. A pulsative wave rippled the air coming from her lungs, splitting the wall of water where a passageway led into the sanctuary. Inside, the forest of sea, coral, jungle trees floated in calmness. Huge cylindric balls drooped from all branches. Light, calm, and welcoming drew in Evie's chest. In the center, above all the other jungle coral, rested a gigantic ball of captured fire. A webbing cocoon encased it, a single web, held tight hanging from the empty air. Ithaca steadied to a calm as they entered. Lucinda stuck her black fingers in the dark wings of the mare and pulled. Ithaca's wings slid off into dust as she then turned and rubbed the dust into Ithaca's rear end. Soon a tail curled, and Ithaca looked like a floating seahorse, prancing as if nothing had occurred. That amazed Evie. Chapter 45, Council. Warm embers filtered the icy chambers of Akmalutra as he held council with Iolaus. What location should we end Aiden's speck of life, Iolaus? Voice cold and harsh with jealousy. Let us do the farewell festivities at your castle. Mine is under repair. Iolaus's voice danced with jubilance. At every syllable, Akmalutra stood, then crossed the room to face his courtyard full of slumbering guards under the night stars. Eldor's water surface seemed to vibrate. The currents reminded him of tossing a stone across the lake and watching the ripples dance. His back facing Iolaus, he nodded. Let us do it here at sunset, then have a masquerade ball to celebrate the beginning of a new era. Iolaus's smile peaked as the firelight lit up his furry locks into yellow flames. His smile sincere as he imagined offing his brother and Aiden, then to Evie's creamy warm flesh, her curves bending and forming to his tight muscles as he imagined her eyes yearning him every which way. Almighty, he wished she had fallen for him. In truth, he seductively consummated their bodies into marriage. She was willing until her senses returned. She was furious. He hoped to tame her animal instincts and only let her instincts show during love-making. Iolaus glanced down at his new golden stiff. Remembering it paused reality. The firelight glistened across it, beaming off of his icy eyes. "'Tis a splendid plan." Then Iolaus left to his chambers to rest and formulate a devious plan, leaving Akmalutra to stare empathetically into the night wind. Chapter 46, Answers. The wall slithers open like a curtain of blue velvet. Evie reached out to touch the sides as her fingers glided across the water. The liquid surface turned to ice drops. They stopped. Alarmed, Evie pulled her hand back to herself. The curtain closed behind them. But liquid water no longer fell. The water turned to ice drops, halted apart, frozen tears. Evie felt like she's been here before, but unsure of remembering it. The feeling of home made her feel uncomfortable. They were now passing jungle coral that stood 100 feet tall and 50 feet round trunks, which were half eaten by termites the size of shrimp, with curly lucid fins. One jungle coral was hidden at the base by yellow and acidic orange water ferns. Ithaca made a noise horses make when they try to communicate. Although Evie couldn't understand, her lips pursed as she pushed a taunting gurgle, and bubbles drifted from her nostrils. The November ferns lifted and slunk away to reveal a large crack with a wooden plank used for a door. The door opened as a young boy with arms full of jungle coral driftwood tried to exit. The wood touched his nose and covered his lips. He stopped, stunned, and his eyes drifted over the black horse, Ithaca, and landed on Evie. His eyebrows raised and held on her. He held tight to the wood, but never took his eyes off of Evie. Her cheeks burned with embarrassment. She looked away out of respect. Evie was always taught never to stare someone down. It was rude and unladylike. Lucinda jumped from the horse and guided them around the shocked young boy. Inside was a large dome room with lights floating around the ceiling. The dome was made up of a special kind of glass, once clear, but the bottom of the dome walls were dipped in dirt. On top you could see the great dome light in the cocoon webbing. Bubbles swam over the dome in unique jubilant movement. In the room sat a throne of gold with sea coral shells ebbed in designs encrusted around it. Sitting melancholy, a small man, ears pointed and downcast. Evie's his eyes large flecking specks of neon purple the size of small begging kittens, with long dark lashes, smiling a toothless grin. Beard ashen and long like a soft fluffy rain cloud. His toothless grin smiling as he greeted them. "Ah, mistress, we've been waiting for your return for a long time. Unfortunately, time has slipped through our fingers. You seek answers, and I am here to take you to your heart's desires. Come, mistress, don't be afraid. Lucinda will be waiting for your return. Follow me." Uncertainty clouded Evie's thinking as she turned to Lucy and waited for her approval of Evie's safety. "Evie, we don't have much time, so move fast and open your mind to infinity possibilities, okay? You must never doubt yourself. Now go." Evie turned to leave, and Lucy grabbed her left hand and whispered, "Hurry for all our sakes," then released her. Evie hurried to follow the small elvish man down a hall to a large door, then stopped. The door startled her. It all seemed eerily familiar. It was elegant under all that thick layer of dirt. The elvish man looked up at Evie and said, "All your questions will be answered. The truth lies behind the blue veil curtain." Then he left, Evie standing there in thought. Evie touched the door with her fingers and pressed slightly. The door slid into the frame, then split in two and pulled apart. Astonished, Evie stepped into the room in awe. It was dark, dusty, and possibly dangerous. Curiosity killed the cat, so Evie stepped cautiously. Hanging from the ceiling, a chandelier, its ancient crystal buried in coral, vermin, and water crustaceans. A bed, dusty and disheveled, sat to her right. Next to it sat a makeup table and an armoire thickly covered in debris. To Evie's left on the wall sat a blue velvet curtain. Looking around the room suddenly gave it a dome shape. Evie took the material, slid it off the wall. Under it sat a mirror. It looked as if at one point the wall were covered in mirrors. Slowly, Evie's image startled her. The face shifted grotesquely. Her eyes darkened in a uniquely eerie, demonic shape. Her mouth, white, did the same. Startled, Evie stepped away from the mirror. Webs clung to everything, even her, as she stopped moving. Evie averted her eyes away from the mirror to brush away the webs. "This used to be my dressing room. I think you remember the time we spent together in it." The voice was cool and detached. "Times were different, more primal," the voice went on talking. "You know who I am. They prophesied our return. Your return, Evie. The reflection relished in the statement. Who are you? Can you help me understand what I must do next? The reflection smiled and said, My name was Lorelei. You are the reincarnation of me, Evie. Fate has your life already planned out. Most seem to think history will repeat itself, but in fact you were born to change the rules and tempt even the gods. You have the ability to defy all logic. I don't understand. What is it I must do? The reflection laughed. And the room started to turn cold. You must follow your heart. I have followed you since you picked up the Lex, and its alarming activation sent you from the island of Nori to Akmalutra's front lawn. You absorbed it through contact. It sent you from my home, Eldor, to Umbala. What are you talking about? That absurd paper blowing in the wind? Her eyes made contact with Evie. Yes, but I suspect you knew I was watching you. When you caught me spying upon you when you first woke up in Akmalutra's castle, I sent Aiden to change your future. To ensure you had a future and a choice I was never able to make. That was you? An anguished sigh escaped Evie's lips as she thought back to being startled by Lorelei's ghost. You are the Lex and must follow your heart. Now turn to my arm wire and pull out a dress for your masquerade ball. Evie turned and walked over to the arm wire and opened the doors. Inside stood a sparkling white dress with a hint of turquoise. Evie turned back to the mirror to ask one more question. Why? Was all that left her lips. Because it was written. You need to seduce both Iolus and Akmalutra to obtain 2 parts of the key that follow your heart. Then follow your heart to finish your conquest. Also, you need to somehow obtain Aiden's stith. If you believe your abilities will assist you in certain situations. The room started to shift, making Evie dizzy. Dirt disappeared from the mirrors, bed, and furniture. The chandelier shed the filth and was glowing warm. Evie's mind was frazzled as her body lifted into the air. She began to spin. The mirrors turned so fast it was a haze. Soon it all stopped and Evie was set down on the ground. But her outfit changed and her hair was fashioned for a masquerade. Evie's mask delicately resting over her nose. Sparkles dusted her cheeks. The slippers she was wearing were dainty and fashioned from an expensive material. Evie had seashell clips that sparkled throughout her auburn tresses. Evie glanced back at the mirror. Then Lorelei said, Now's our second chance to make everything right. Now go and follow your heart. I will forever be with you, guiding you towards safety. Evie bowed and thanked Lorelei, then out the door frame she went. When Evie turned, the room was the same as when she first entered. Mirror hidden behind the blue velvet cloth. Evie stepped over the threshold and the spliced door closed and fixed itself as if nothing had occurred. How odd, Evie said aloud, then returned to Lucy, who greeted her with a warm hug. As she touched Evie, her body stiffened, whispering, Aiden is to be sent to the gallows by sunset, as the masquerade begins. Evie held her softly. I know what I must do if you'll permit it. She pulled back slightly, gazing into Evie's eyes. She could easily see her reflection in Lucy's piercing white eyes. Of course. What is it? Evie smiled wryly. I'm going to follow my heart. Chapter 47. Dawning of a New Era. Warm embers of Imbala's sunlight glistened around Akmalutra's grass, signaling for the party to begin. Akmalutra sat in his best dress and waited for Iolaus to give signal from Lycos's back. Boredom creased his eyes as he waited impatiently. The sun's set, torches were lit, guests were dressed and having a ball. Aiden's neck was being fitted. Akmalutra stood at Iolaus's signal and began his speech. This traitor is under treason for being a triple spy and harboring the propherical girl. 'Tis the end of one era and the dawning of a new. As he said those words, he was about to drop the signal for Aiden's strangle. But he saw something that could well persuade him otherwise. Akmalutra had no doubt that his brother had seen her also. He turned to Iolaus, but he was gone. Looking back at Evie, white dress sparkling with a turquoise tint, everything about her made his heart skip beats. Chapter 48. Sacrificing the Gallows. Coming through the clearing, Evie saw Iolaus on his dragon and Akmalutra, hand in midair. Evie's eyes followed his hand to Aiden. Seeing him beaten up and in danger made her heart skip beats. Evie rushed up to the podium. Akmalutra stood in shock. Evie dropped to her knees and begged him not to end Aiden's life. Please, sire, I beg you not to end his life. Please swap our places. Let him go free. He has family. I will sacrifice myself. I'll do anything, please. Not a second wasted. Akmalutra glanced at Aiden and said, "Release him." As soon as the rope slipped off of Aiden's neck, he rushed to embrace Evie, whispering frantically, "How could you?" Evie held him tight. "Blame it on me. Maybe they needed to be wanted. What if I die without you? I couldn't go on. I followed my heart, and I wouldn't change a thing. I love you, Aiden McTavish." Fighting her emotions, Evie almost lost her composure as her temperature raised in disgust over her next dutiful objectives. Maybe Evie needed to be wanted, but only by Aiden. "I was used and wronged, betrayed. Promise me you will ride Ithaca far away from here to safety." "I promise," is all he had to say. But he didn't. He pulled out of their embrace and kissed Evie passionately. Sparks of hate ignited from her lips to his. He sprang to his feet and darted toward the Etruscan forest, toward Ithaca, his promising black beauty. Chapter 49. 2 Worlds Apart. Akmalutra watched Aiden rush from Evie's side into the Etruscan forest. The only thing that came to his mind was coward. After Aiden was gone from view, he walked toward Evie, bent low and pulled her into a hug, whispering gently, "You are brave, and I am truly sorry for everything." He helped her stand, but still kept her enclosed in his warm embrace. People seemed to be watching until Akmalutra looked up and caught glances. Music started playing, soft and melodic. Evie still in his arms, he decided to take her and start dancing. Holding her gave him butterflies. He twirled her and even caught a smile and a giggle from her. Soon after, he gently led her to his chambers, firelight throwing waves of warmth and light gently across the room. The mood was set as he turned her back toward his bed, gently brushing auburn tresses away from her face and clipping each coral clip, and kissing the spots where the clips used to hold tight. Akmalutra takes her chin and raises it gently, to remove the mask and kiss her. Sparks of passion flutter through his lips. He pulls up for air, then picks Evie up and sets her softly on the mattress, loosening her bodice, and dressing her with his eyes, then continues to kiss her while climbing partially on top of her. sliding his fingers over her plump curves, then behind her back, lifting her closer to his heated chest and bulging cock. With his other hand, he slides it up her skirts, lifting her thighs, pulling her closer, ready to take what was rightfully his. He meets her fingers between her legs, her legs, as she reaches up and caresses the bulge through his pants. She notices the arousal and his eyes roll back. Then the flames of passion overcome him, and she knows she must be ready for his pounce. Reaching his head down, lips and tongue circling the tip of her nipple, she almost feels nauseated. But she does what she needs to do, kissing up her neck toward her flushed cheeks and her honey-flavored mouth. He dives for a kiss, then thrusts. She pulls her fingers to his temples, whispers, "I'm sorry." His eyes fill with confusion. She blows, line pulsating waves coursing into his temples, knocking him out cold. She's stuck under him, pinned down by his erected cock. His weight all around is blocking her escape. She lays there for a moment, gawking up at Sire Akmalutra. Eyes black and vacant, mouth gleefully smiling. How wry. She's stuck. What a position to get stuck, being stuck. She is pinned. Chapter 50, Love for Only You. Something creaks open and a presence steps into the room. Another minute and I might have had to kill him for touching you, Evie. Aiden's brogue accent made Evie's blood tingle in anticipation. Aiden, please help me. I'm pinned and very uncomfortable. Aiden hoisted Sire Akmalutra off of her, tossing him aside as he slid off of his silky sheets and off of his bed. Since he's the youngest brother, he has the smallest bit of the key. Aiden couldn't help but notice her shirt lay open and her skirt cranked up to her upper part of her thigh. Excuse me while I get modest. Aiden looked down at the crazed fool on the floor, surprised that the prince ass didn't land on his penis and break it in half, or even off. Aiden reached the necklace and Akmalutra, yanking off the medallion and handing it to Evie. Love, we need to leave. I have a place for us to go until the heat is off. Evie's eyes lifted to his, and she stepped near him and reached for his neck to pull him down for an intimate kiss. I asked you to promise me you would leave to safety, and you needn't hear my warning. I ask you not because I want to boss you into doing what I say, but merely because I love you and hold you very dear to my heart. I missed you. And now find my heart skips as I'm still missing you, even though you are here in my embrace. Thank you. I love you. They sneak out of the chamber through the passageway Aiden had entered through the shelves. Chapter 51, Devious Rats. Plans were beginning to fall in place for Iolus as he watched Evie being escorted to Akmalutra's chambers. He was sure she had a plan for Akmalutra, a devious one at that. So he hid behind the mirror and watched, teeth gritted as he bared Akmalutra with his bride. It was almost unbearable. He even caught himself from jumping out from behind the mirror and decapitating his younger twin. He nearly crept out like a wild animal in a jealous rage as his brother almost thrust his manhood into his Evie. Green lime glowed at Akmalutra's temples, knocking him out on top of Evie. Whew, was all Iolus could release. He continued to take In the event, Evie laid trapped. It was almost comical. The gentleman part of him wanted to assist his fallen beauty, but at the corner of the room, Aiden skirted around a bookstand, ebbed in the wall. I always listened to Aiden rumble about Akamutra, and he couldn't have agreed more. Iolaus wished Akamutra had landed on his penis and broke it off. He laughed in his mind's eye. He also listened to Evie and Aiden's conversation over her asking him to promise of safety, and how he defied all odds to come back for true love and rescue her from that scary erection. He did wish he were for the first time in Aiden's shoes for Evie's sake, but that also made him despise the bastard even more with blinding jealous rage. But for Evie's sake he would hold his position and temper until later. Soon Evie and Aiden left. Alice stepped out from around the mirror and closed it behind him. While gazing at his barbaric handsomeness, then he pulled Aiden's golden stick out of his pocket and turned it backwards and activated the transmitter. He followed through the mirror, cautiously telling Aiden and his beloved Evie. Chapter 52. Passionate Rain. Rain patted against the carriage sides, making a peaceful lulling that brought Evie's eyes to a close. She was leaned into Aiden's warm embrace. He held her and whispered poetry from his land as she fell into a slumber of their entwining passion. She slunk into his embrace even tighter. No matter where life takes me, Aiden, I will always love you. Even if danger follows, I will fight for our love. He listened to her with great patience and understanding. Aye, lass, my dearest Evie, where I go you will be there with me forever now. We will be together until the end, and even after. She pulled up to kiss him wickedly. Thank you, I needed to hear that from your lips. Soon the carriage stopped in front of a little pub in Shrievegrove called the Towering Twins Inn. Aiden, I would travel 1,000,000 miles to come to your rescue. You know that, right? I, lass, and I you.